Are you trying to navigate this crazy thing called life? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unraveling with Rayne. Hey guys, I'm here with Cara Gardner. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. How's your day been?
Interesting.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's the end of the school year, so it's kind of crazy with my oldest. And I had a friend kind of call me, and she's going through a lot of stuff, and I was able to kind of encourage her, so that was nice. But it's been a crazy but good day.
Yeah, I like those days. Crazy but good.
Yeah. Yeah, full but good.
Yeah, we can manage those days, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I know that you are blogging and doing a lot of things on social media as far as encouraging others and all of that. But if you could just kind of take us back to where this process kind of started for you and where things kind of started to shift in your life.
Well, I feel I'm a Christian, so I probably should state that. So what I say going forward makes sense. For me, I've felt like a strong calling to encourage people, but I've never really known how to do that and how to reach people in that way. And so, like, really the past year has been kind of discovering how I'm going to do that. And so I started with baby steps because I consider myself to be an introvert. So I'm much more comfortable just kind of by myself and one-on-one with people or in a very small group. So I started a Facebook page and kept it private. And there's about 13 women in that group. And it's just a way for me to post weekly, usually, about, I don't know, like, it's just ways to encourage them, quotes, something to think about, empowering quotes and things like that. And it was really awesome because the women seemed pretty receptive to it. And I didn't know what to expect going in. And so it started as that. And then I had felt like I was supposed to start a blog, like, write in some way. I just really didn't know how to get started. It was really dragging my feet.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I really do. I think
hard.
that I sat on the idea of starting a blog for a good 6 months before I actually did anything with it. Yeah.
So it can be really difficult trying to figure out, well, what am I going to say? Like, how often am I going to post? And feeling like you have to follow like the set of rules so that people will watch it or read it, you know? And so I dragged my feet for a long time and then finally came up with a name, which was Lighthouse Mama. And that kind of stems from the fact that I want to be like a beacon of light to my girls.
Yeah.
As, the basics. And then also to just be able to shine God's love and light on other people because that's what I love doing and I enjoy it. And then I kind of came up with the concept of that it could be a way, the blog could be a way for me to reach women who are either just beginning their walks in their faith or kind of exploring it or maybe even further down the road and they're, questioning things or they're dealing with guilt or shame, which seems to be so prominent within Christianity, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so, I find it's a really great platform to be able to share my heart and be authentic with people and let them know, like, I don't have all things figured out, and I'm imperfect, and I try my best, and I just try to be real with people and try to encourage them along the way.
Yeah.
So
I think that's all we can do a lot of the time. Just be like, hey, this is what I know. I don't know it all, but this is what I got.
Yeah.
Right? And connecting on that level with people is it's so amazing because you're like, oh, we have a shared experience or shared feeling or, just that connection with them is really cool. Did you struggle at all with the concept of, okay, so I should post like this and it should be consistent and it should be in this format and put out this way so that way you could, create that following?
Yes.
Yeah.
I tend to not like to fit myself into a box, but I also want to be able to reach people. So it's like this fine balance of, for me, I post when I feel like God's placing something in my heart to share that will encourage people or that will maybe help people see things in a different light, or I basically wait until I feel called to do it. So sometimes it's like, if you look at my blog, it's really been like once a month where I feel like a strong calling to be like, okay, you need to post this or you need to, and my last 2 postings have been videos and they're unedited because I don't know how to edit. This is so funny. So they're like, I'm rambling half the time, but I try to bring it back in.
Well, that's authentic.
Well, and I had a friend tell me, she's like, this is what was so powerful about the blog. She was saying, like, it was in the ramblings that I saw your heart, and she was really struggling, and she's a youth pastor, and she's going through a really difficult time, and it's a time of transition, and she was feeling like God wasn't good because there's a lot of hard stuff she's having to deal with right now. And she told me it was okay to share this. So
Okay.
I'm not sharing something I should. She was saying that she watched my blog at the perfect time, and that it was in those ramblings that she was empowered, and she felt moved and was like, okay, God is good. And she's like, I really feel like I'm on fire for my faith, and that I can feel his love when I hear you speak. And I'm like, oh, that's so awesome.
There it is.
Yeah, exactly. It was like my aha moment of like, okay, this is doing something, I'm doing this. It is good.
Right.
Because I deal with insecurity just like everyone else.
Sure.
And so I was like, I'm not even really sure anybody's going to watch this. Like, who cares? I'm not a theologian. I am not a counselor. I just like experience what I experience and want to share it with people and hope for the best, that people would be encouraged by it.
I think that when we're moved to speak through our heart, then it just works out that way. Whether it's edited and clean cut and has all the music and everything, or if it's just sitting down in front of a camera trying to connect with somebody else, so it's funny how it works like that. Yeah. So was switching it to video kind of a fun change for you, or more intimidating, or just something you decided to try?
It was both.
Yeah.
When I write, I feel like I can filter through some things and then maybe go back and be like, maybe that's not exactly how I would want to say it. So I can go back and kind of fine tune things. Again, the video piece without the editing, it is really cool because you get to see all of like where my mind goes,
right?
Which is a little embarrassing, a little scary for people to see, like all the kind of scattered thoughts, but I feel like I do an okay job of kind of bringing it back together.
Yeah.
Even if I do kind of go off, but
well, we are way more critical of ourselves than anybody else is going to be.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. That's so true. That I don't know that I've heard a truer statement. And I was just talking to somebody about how, like, as women too, we're so hard on ourselves. And I'm like, why? Why do we do that to ourselves? I don't understand. But
because we want to be that standard that, I'm trying to move and do the right things at the right times, and sometimes if we just be us, and that's what puts us in the right place at the right time. So, yeah. So take me a little bit back to your journey and how you came to this place of, wanting to write and reach people. I mean, there has to be a backstory that brought you there.
Yeah. I think that's true for everyone. There's something, usually a defining moment or maybe a series of things that bring them to that. For me, it's just kind of it's a long time coming. My childhood was pretty rough, and there were a lot of dark times, and there was abuse. So, I understand what it's like to be in a place where you feel lost and the world feels empty and dark, and you're kind of scrambling to try to find your place and to know that you have purpose and to know that you're loved, and I experienced love, like my mom showed me the best that she could when she was raising me, but there was just a lot of other things that kind of counterbalanced that. Yeah. And as a child, you see things through a little bit of a different lens. And so, I felt very alone, and just it was really difficult. And that kind of puts me in a position now to where I don't want to see anybody having to feel like they're alone, or that they don't have a sense of direction, or that they're not being called to different things, to big things, and that they don't have a God that loves them, like,
sure,
unconditionally. That's so, like, big, whether you're religious or not. Like,
sure,
you are loved so much beyond anything that you can possibly understand. I mean, and that's powerful to know that. And sometimes all it takes is for somebody to speak that.
Sure.
And it may take time for you to believe it.
Yeah.
But it's so true. And so I didn't really grow up Christian. I grew up in the church. Starting in third grade is when I started going, but I didn't really I was missing, like, the relationship piece. And I feel like that's what really makes your faith feel real, is having that relationship. And because you can know the Bible, you can hear all the stories, but if it's not personal to you and you haven't experienced how he's moved in your life and experienced what that relationship feels like, it doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Sure.
And so for me, that happened through a lot of my struggles. Because of my upbringing, I had a really low view of myself. And so I made pretty self-destructive decisions as a 12 to 15-year-old, which is a really hard time anyway. Middle school is just really rough.
Oh, I think we should all be homeschooled for middle school and then go back to high school.
That's really something to think about as I raise my girls.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm seriously contemplating. I've been throwing it around for a couple years, homeschooling, but there's a lot that goes into it that scares me.
We did, if you want to talk about it later.
Did you?
We homeschooled until my daughter was going into 2nd grade.
Oh, wow.
And we loved it for many reasons, but due to personality conflicts, it was so much better now that she's been in school this year.
Really?
Yes. But there's so many benefits and so many things we loved about homeschooling.
Sure, yeah. I'd like to pick your brain.
Yeah, sure. I would love to talk to you about it, yeah.
So you're kind of going through this self-destructive time around, 12 to 15. Is that kind of where you had that aha moment?
No.
No?
I was in, self-destruction mode at that time, really angry. I think I had reached a point where I was tired of being a victim, especially when abuse comes from somebody that you can't control it, For me, it was a stepdad, and he was just so mean, and there's nothing you can do when they live with you, and you're in it. And so I became very angry at school. My mom eventually divorced this husband and married somebody else who was abusive and different. He was emotionally and verbally abusive. He really demeaned my mom, and so him and I fought.
Sure.
Because at that time I was 12 when they got married, and so I was defending my mom and then, standing up for her when she wouldn't stand up for herself and things like that.
Sure.
And then fighting with my teachers at school. I started drinking when I was 12, hung out with a group of kids who we all were kind of mad, and just were venting to each other. And yeah, it eventually became a little old. And I was tired of being angry all the time. When you carry this, that weight, it's a little much and begins to weigh on you. And so when I was about 15, I kind of started coming out of that. It was I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't want to, drink every weekend. I don't want to complain anymore. I don't want to be fighting with teachers. I don't want to have all this anger in my heart. I'm just tired of it. I was overwhelmed, and the weight of it was just crushing me. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I remember coming home from school one day and just feeling the weight of it all of a sudden. I can't explain why. It was just, it all hit me at once. And I was I can't do this anymore. And I remember crying and then feeling man, it would just be so much easier if I went to sleep and I didn't wake up. And I'm thankful that directly after that thought, it was I was terrified, because I'm well, that's not necessarily a healthy thing to be thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
And
kind of rattled the system a little bit.
It did. Yeah. And I remember deciding that I needed to go to church camp that summer because, like I said, I'd grown up in the church. But again, there was a disconnect. And I had gone to camps before. It wasn't anything new. I went for fun. All my friends were there.
Sure.
And this was the first one where I was man, I just need to go. So I went and I yelled at God and was just super angry and was I can't believe this is the life that you have given me. You're supposed to care about me. I don't feel like you care at all. I'm angry. And I desperately need you right now. And I haven't been able to feel that you can even see me or that what's going on with me.
Sure.
And that camp kind of changed everything, he, after yelling pretty much all weekend, it was a process and breaking down and crying and just really letting him have it and, just praying for peace. I just wanted to be at peace. I wanted to be a happy person because my natural makeup is pretty optimistic and I don't know. I have a sunny disposition.
Sure.
But during this whole time, it's I was the polar opposite. And so I really wanted to get back to that. And I wanted peace and I wanted a sense of direction. I wanted to feel like my life meant something, and that there was hope and that there was something better.
Yeah.
And, by the end of camp, I didn't feel angry anymore. It was profound because I had never experienced that sense of peace before, because I struggled in my childhood with, my mom worked a lot and tried her best to provide for us, but I was alone a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. And man, it's just, I felt like things were always stressful. Like you're always worried, like, are we going to be able to have dinner? Are we going to be able to, buy a new pair of pants if something happens to these ones? Like, are we going to be able to pay our bills? I mean, there was always a lot of stress wrapped into that. So sure. To be able to experience that peace and that anger be lifted was, like I said, it was profound and beautiful and surprising. And I felt hopeful, yeah. And it was such an incredible experience, and one that's like, people hear it and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, man. Like, I can't explain it. That's how it worked for me. And yeah. And then I chose to get baptized after that, at the end of that weekend. And a lot of my friends were pretty surprised by that because, like I said, they'd known I'd gone to church, but I would have never considered myself necessarily a Christian, like sure. wanting that relationship. And so, yeah, I made it. I changed things around.
Was that transition hard, going back and being like, okay, I need to kind of reevaluate who I'm hanging out with and what I'm doing and all of that?
You would think it would be really difficult, especially at 15.
Sure.
It was not hard.
Really?
And I can't explain it. It was just, I knew what I needed to do. Mm-hmm. I knew that I needed to kind of change my group of friends. I kept ones that I felt close to, that I knew would be okay with my kind of transitioning into a different way of thinking. Mm-hmm. I had some really good conversations with some of my friends because they're like, this is really weird. Like, I can't, like, you were just, right. Over here complaining about stuff and F this and F that and all, and now you're like, I love Jesus. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't ever like overtly be like, I love Jesus. But, right. It kind of weirded them out a little bit.
Sure.
And so, you kind of have to deal with the fact that sometimes people won't understand. And I'm not about, trying to get other people to believe what I believe. Yeah. So with my friends, I'm just like, listen, like, I experienced something profound, and this is what's best for me. And I love you. I'm not judging you for what you choose to do, but I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry, and I have to make better decisions for myself because I need to go down a different path. Yeah. And,
what an incredibly mature step to make at that age.
It wasn't me. Like, God was kind of walking me through that one. Yeah. Because it was not like me to be very mature in that way. Yeah. I've always been kind of an old soul, so, it wouldn't be odd to kind of think that way for me. But even so, it was a total, for me, it was a God thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Just following that lead.
Yeah. So that kind of led me to where I am now. I've struggled a lot in between choosing to be baptized and having that relationship. Like, I've veered off. I've completely walked away from my faith for a time. Really? I had a miscarriage at 13 weeks, and it was incredibly difficult. Yeah. And I was mad. Just like my friend was sharing with me, like, she's going through these unreal circumstances where she just feels overwhelmed by the weight of it all. And you sit there and you wonder, like, how can God allow this kind of suffering? Sure. And so it really rattles you. And for me, I explored other religions and philosophies and found beauty in so many of them. And I feel like that made me more aware of other people and other belief systems and more empathetic, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did that impact how you viewed overall? Just because there are so many correlations and similarities amongst all the different religions and spirituality and all these things. Honestly, as I explore it, I'm kind of coming to that same thing. I'm just like, wow. Look at, if we just step back for a second and take away all of the labels and the, definition of this and that, and it has to be this way and that way, and we just kind of look at each other, we're like, hey, we're both people, and we're trying to get through this crazy life. So
we're not so different.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like even though there have been hard times and struggles, you just kind of fell back to your faith and to get you through those things.
Well, eventually I came back to it. There were some other things that kind of led up to my kind of walking away. We had some bad experiences in the church. It was my mistake in judging my faith based on fellow Christians in the church. Like, I felt like there was a lot of hypocrisy, and I just wasn't cool with that. I'm like, if that's what being a Christian looks like, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
So it was a big turnoff for me. What I didn't understand at the time, and I was like 22 at the time. So, when you're in your 20s, you go through a phase, you feel like you know everything and you're so sure. And then in your 30s, you're like, I don't know anything. Yeah. I'm starting from scratch. So it's kind of beautiful that way. But I was like, well, it shouldn't be that way. This is just, it's not right. I don't want anything to do with that faith, if that's what it looks like. And, there is a point to that. Like, as a Christian, you are called to love people well. And for some reason, I don't know why, but there seems to be a disconnect sometimes that's optional, or that's, like, it's okay to judge, but it's not okay to love. Like, I come from a completely opposite mindset of, it's not my place to judge. It's my job and what I'm called, and I enjoy it so much, to love people well.
Yeah.
And so the more I explore these other religions and philosophies, like Buddhism rang so beautifully to me, and I'm like, oh man, there's had a very special place for me. I came to realize that in Christianity, like, those were the parts that I was missing, was that, and it hadn't been necessarily demonstrated to me really, was that within my faith, there's those same concepts. Like, we are to be kind to each other and to love each other well, and love is an action word. Yeah. So it's not just saying I love you, it's doing things for people and being there for people and loving people through stuff. And
I think people get hung up on the word love. They view it in a way that is very narrow, like interpersonal love, instead of like, I just love. That's just what I do.
I agree with you. Yeah.
It's strange, but I've noticed it shift a little bit with more and more people that I talk to, so that's really exciting for me.
Yeah. That's really neat.
Yeah, have you seen that also?
I think the ideas are kind of shifting. The idea that it's not just like a love between a husband and wife. Yeah. Or between a child and their parents. Like, when I say that I want to love people well, it means that I want to help them become the best version of themselves. I want to love them where they're at. And, and sometimes that means just like encouraging them along the way. Sometimes that means, practical service, like making somebody a meal because they're going through a hard time. Yeah. It can be something as simple as a smile. For sure. Or a hug, or thank you, like, and those things are not as common, I think, as I would like to believe that they are, which makes it all that more important that people love people well, For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So going back to your writing, what would you say was your... let's start with your hardest piece of writing.
Probably my very first post on my blog was difficult because I'm like, I don't even know where to start. And so I think the title of my first one is like, who, what, why, and again, like, it's some like random, basically me trying to say like, this is kind of why I'm doing it. This is who I am. This is what I hope you get out of it. Yeah. Type of a post. But it was really hard throwing that together because at the time I really wasn't sure what it was going to kind of morph into. I'm kind of leaving that open. Yeah. But I had to come up with something instead of just start like, I'm just going to start posting. They have no idea who I am and why.
Yeah, that's what I did. I was like, hey, here you go. I don't know. I'm just going to throw it out there.
And how was it received? How did you get people to come to your blog not knowing exactly, other than the fact that it was you that was writing it?
Yeah. I didn't really think about it a whole lot, honestly. I just was like, kind of going back to how you're saying you don't write unless you feel moved to write. That's a huge part of it for me as well. Like, I can I can sit down and force myself to write something on a particular topic, but I don't necessarily feel like those are my best work, my best pieces. So in the beginning, I just was like, here it is. And I think my first one was on like, it was based around transitional periods and that wait and that long, like, ugh, we're going to get there eventually. I know we're going to get there, but we got to hold this time to wait and process and do the things, you know? So yeah, I just kind of went for it. I don't know.
The waiting is so hard.
It is.
It really is
so hard, especially when you know that you're like, if I just keep going and I make it to the other side of this, it's going to be amazing. But I need to buckle down and just do what I need to do right now.
Oh, so hard.
Yeah. So what was your favorite piece to write? Or your favorite blog to write? Or do you have one?
I think my favorite was the one that's "You Are Loved," and basically it's like my love song, like my message to people. You know, that if anything else, if I never say anything, but that's all that they ever read, or that's all they ever heard me say, would be that they're loved. You know, and you'd be surprised how many people don't know that they are. You know, and that they are valuable, and that they are important, and you know, that they have so much to offer. You know, it breaks my heart a little bit, actually, because for a time I worked with high schoolers at our church. I served in youth ministry with my husband. After Annabelle, I took a break. But it's heartbreaking to see people walking around feeling empty, you know, and a lot of our kids, like, they come from places where, you know, things are rough. And so I think it's funny, I just said our kids. The high school kids, I consider, I love them all, but and then you see what that looks like as an adult. You know, you see a lot of brokenness and a lot of like self-destructive decisions, and it just breaks your heart because it doesn't need to be that way. And you know that like life could be so much easier and so have purpose, you know. And when life has purpose, especially for me, like when I'm feeling excited about something, or I feel like God's like, yeah, do it, I'm like, okay, you know, and it's like a new zeal and zest. It's really exciting. And you know,
do you ever hit those, ooh, I don't want to?
Oh yeah, I do. I do, big time.
But then you know you really have to, right?
Oh yeah, and then I'm like, oh okay,
you're right,
I really should do this.
Yeah.
I definitely have those times.
What would you say would be the best way for people to find what their purpose is?
Well, I mean, it depends. I coming from my Christian background, I would say to pray about it. I went through a book study with a group of women last fall, and it was so cool. It wasn't necessarily new information that I didn't already know, but it was beautiful the way that it was written. It's called "You're Already Amazing" by Holly Girth, and she is Christian, so it has the Christian lean, and there are Bible verses in there. But really, it's beautiful, and it's an encouragement to women, especially, you know, 'cause she's like, hey, girl, like, you got this, you know, it's really powerful. And in it, she kind of talks about, like, what gets you excited, you know, what can you spend hours doing, and it seems like just minutes have passed. What are you naturally good at? What are you finding are becoming things that you're good at? You know, she asks all these really intriguing questions, and it makes you reflect on, you know, what are these things? For me, like, I definitely would say to pray about it, ask God to show you what your giftings are. I think sometimes we have an idea, but we're not sure. So we don't want to act out on those things because, well, what if I fail?
Then you start over.
Exactly.
Or you've learned something and then you start over.
Exactly. But sometimes it can be hard to get there. You know, I've been in that place where I'm like, well, I don't want to like fail at it, because then if this is my gifting and I fail at it, well, then what now?
It really wasn't your gifting.
Exactly. You know, so you second guess yourself.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, I would say, you know, think about the questions that I presented, and then also that book is really great if you happen to be Christian. And then there's also so many, I mean, there's so many tests that you can take that can tell you what your strengths are and stuff. My friend Andy and I went through a book called Strength Finder 2.0, and it was actually written by a man who's in the business world, and he uses it within business. But I would say that the answers that you get can be used universally.
Sure.
And so it's really powerful to know, like, for me, my giftings it was like empathizer, intellecting, and I don't know, I had a few, like unity something. And my friend Andy had the exact opposites, like the polar opposites of mine, which actually complemented each other.
Sure.
And so that can be really powerful too, is, finding resources, and they're all over the place, but for me, prayer is kind of like the biggest one.
Sure. Yeah. I think that especially our young people are being fed all of this stuff, like, go seek and, seize the day and do this and do that. And I feel, this is just my perception of it, but sometimes I feel like we don't give them enough tangible things to help guide them.
Well,
like,
they're
we're
all
just
over
like,
the
hey,
place.
go. And then they're like, but how? Or what do I use? Or, you know what I mean? So I ask you that because I think that it's good to get other people's perspective on how to do that, on what tools to use to find your purpose, so that way we can, eventually get there.
Well,
sort of.
For my oldest, I'll give an example of what I've told her. I've shared with her, like, because I want her to know what her giftings are, so that she can, and again, this comes from my Christian perspective, is that we all have a unique way that we can live out God's love in people's lives. And some people are practical helpers. Some people are encouragers. Some people are meant to write music or books or have a blog or, which technically I don't know what that would be, as far as, like, there are a list of giftings in the Bible, and I'm not a Bible scholar, but I know it's like shepherding and encouraging is one, and
right.
and all of the teaching, all of these things. But what I tell my daughter is, like, what do you get excited about? What do you love to do? And I take notice of what she really enjoys. And I think if we can harness that when our kids are younger, and then take notice maybe if our friends are feeling a little bit lost, kind of take notice in what they really enjoy doing, what kind of feeds their spirit or their soul. Man, that can be used in such powerful ways and can empower them too.
Sure.
To make a difference. It's just so cool. Anyway, but that's how I encourage my daughter. And then I tell her to pray about it. And she's like, okay, Mom,
Well, I think that's typical kid response. All right, I will. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, I know that you've also got other projects that you're working on, right? So you have your page, and this is now a public page, or is it still private?
Well, the Aqua Teacup is a private Facebook page.
Right.
And that's separate. That has about 13 members. It's just for basically this small group of women that I felt like I could connect to intimately in that way.
Yeah.
I started one recently called the Good of Tri-Cities page. It was in an effort to kind of counterbalance all of the negative, like, sad, tragic, like, hard news that we hear. I am not one to say don't watch it, because I think it's really important to know what's going on in our world so we know how to make a difference and where we're needed. But I also feel like it's super important to have that counterbalance of positivity and positive things that we hear. I feel like there needs to be more outlets for people to hear about all the good stuff that goes on. So for me, like, I made it local because I do believe that there's enough going on in Tri-Cities and enough people who show kindness and who are doing, like, powerful and wonderful things in our community. And I wanted that page to be a place where they can share that.
Yeah.
Or where I can share that. I just sent a group of questions to the founders of Tri-Cities Rocks. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's so funny. So basically, it's like a rock painting. It reminds me of my grandma. That's probably why it's so dear to my heart. I think it's so cool. They paint rocks and then they hide them around the community. And then other families go and hunt for these rocks. And my sister-in-law told me about it, and she now lives in Idaho, but she did it when she lived here too. I was like, well, that's kind of a fun idea. Maybe I'll take Lila. She might enjoy that. And she loved it. I mean, like, it got me outside, engaging with my family. It was like this fun activity to do, and just to see the joy in her face when she would pick up this painted rock. Right. It just seems inconsequential, but it's beautiful.
Right.
Like, Anyway, so I was really intrigued by the idea. So I got a hold of the founders and sent them some questions. I'm going to be posting their answers and kind of, I'm going to be writing a piece for the page and kind of featuring them. And I have some ideas and some other people that I'm going to be talking to kind of post about them and what they're doing in the community. But it's exciting. I really, our world needs a little more positivity, and especially our media and Facebook pages and things like that. Anywhere you can get any positive news would be nice.
Right. And the Tri-Cities has something very interesting that you don't find in a lot of other places. It's kind of spread out, but it still kind of feels like a tight-knit group.
You will run into somebody that you know usually every time that you go somewhere.
Yes.
So it is definitely true that way.
Yeah.
It is really spread out, but somehow you will know somebody who knows somebody, or you will see somebody that you know.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It is.
Yeah, so I think it's a great concept, keeping this like a local thing and posting all of the local things there. Just one more way to keep us all connected and together. So awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm hoping that it kind of takes off. It's been kind of slow moving. I feel like I'm posting the most, and
it's okay.
I really wanted to share like things that my daughter does that I'm so moved by, because I feel like it's really important to share not just the big things, but just like the everyday small things that make a huge impact. Maybe you won't see it today, but it does. I mean, any act of kindness, any act of generosity, or attempting to bring joy to somebody or love, that's huge, and it's big, and it may not seem big, and you may never see the results of it, but that's not the point. Like, the fact that it's out there, and I want to share that, and I'm really hoping that more people start sharing those things. Just the little stuff too. I think those can sometimes mean the biggest, that can make the most difference and be the most beautiful. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. What is your perspective on how the Tri-Cities is going to look as far as bringing more love and light and connection to the community?
Well, my hope is that I feel like we are connected somewhat as a community, but there is also a sense of disconnection. I would love for people who visit here to be like, that was the friendliest place I've ever been. Like, people are genuinely really nice.
Yeah.
That's kind of my hope, that people here would exude this kindness and this, like, you're home, you're here, it's hard to explain. And I'm hopeful that we'll see that. I think the future could be pretty cool for Tri-Cities if we can all learn to be a little more accepting of each other, see how similar we are, like we were talking about, and kind of get past those little differences that seem so big, and knock those walls down, and just learn to appreciate each other and see the good in each other.
Yeah.
And let each other know what the good is that we see in them. Because sometimes that's key.
Yeah.
And they may not know it.
Right.
And I just think it's really cool to be able to share that with people.
Yeah. It's amazing how often that one's missed.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to say it, and then they know.
I know that there's been missed opportunities, so I'm like, I should have told her that I just think she's the coolest person, And then I'm like, well, she might think I'm a giant weirdo. If I'm like,
oh my gosh, I have that thought so many times. I'm like, oh, maybe it's good I didn't say that, because no.
Rein it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I got you on that one.
It's so funny.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for coming in and sharing your story, and I love the work that you're doing, and keep doing it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to help support Unraveling with Rayne, go to patreon.com/unravelingwithrayne. When you become a patron, you receive bonus content such as behind-the-scenes footage, along with other special content that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Music for Unraveling with Rayne was provided by Barefoot Randy.